Modifying Philosophy and Science in the U.S. in Order to Advance Cybernetics by Stuart Umpleby. Okay. What is the infrastructure of science? Well, it includes classrooms and libraries, computers and the internet, microscopes and telescopes, a conception of what science is and how it operates, and an overview of philosophy, where we have been, where we are going, what we think we know, and what we want to know. The history of cybernetics is different in different countries. Those working to advance cybernetics in the U.S. have encountered difficulties that have not emerged in other countries, particularly Europe. It is noteworthy that European academic conversations frequently involve references to leading philosophers. Some of the newer ideas in cybernetics, such as second-order cybernetics, have been welcomed in Europe but rejected in the U.S. Attitudes regarding the role of philosophy in science are different in the U.S. and Europe. There are two views of philosophy. In Europe, philosophy is regarded as the mother discipline, the field from which other branches of knowledge emerged. In the U.S., philosophy is regarded as one of the humanities, a neighboring field to the arts, languages, and history, with no connection to science except to the methodology of science. Americans do not study the philosophical origins of the various disciplines. For example, before Adam Smith created economics, he taught moral philosophy. In Europe, the history of philosophy is taught as a conversation between the followers of Plato and the followers of Aristotle. The notes that I'm going to present on philosophy are from Dick Gregory, an AI researcher in the UK. So there are 2 points of view, realism and idealism. Under realism, the real world consists of matter. We are logically distinct from the world we observe. The truth of our knowledge is an empirical correspondence truth. Under idealism, the real world consists of what matters. What is observed interpenetrates with the process of observing. And truth is coherence, not correspondence. One can describe a metaphor for both realism and idealism. The realist metaphor says that knowledge is a commodity. Knowledge is distinct from its knower. Knowledge is facts and rules. Knowledge can be broken down into primitives. And the goal is to represent the world as it really is. Under the idealist metaphor, knowledge is a process. Knowledge is coherent systems of relationships among ideas. Knowledge connects knowers with the world. What is basic depends on the knower. The problem is to render different perspectives coherent with each other. We can list a series of philosophers who are generally called realists. These philosophers include Democritus, back in BC, Aristotle, Vives, Galileo, Descartes, Newton, Comte, the Vienna Circle philosophers, and Watson, Skinner, Einstein, and the field of artificial intelligence. Idealist philosophers would include Plato, St. Augustine, Aquinas, Berkeley, Hume, Kant, Fichte, Bergson, and Bohr, Heisenberg, and the field of cybernetics. The 2 columns listing the names of philosophers indicate that there is a large gap in philosophy in the U.S. The point is not that one point of view is right and the other is wrong. The point is that knowing both points of view provides a larger set of conceptual possibilities. A large part of philosophy, which is taught in Europe, is not widely known in the U.S. The conceptual infrastructure of science in Europe is larger, than the conceptual infrastructure of science in the US. Philosophical foundations that are taken for granted in Europe are not known by scientists in the US. There are two quite different conceptions of knowledge that spring from realism and idealism. Realism, an extension of Aristotle, and idealism or constructivism, an extension of Plato. Realism provided the industrial age with a philosophy based on matter and energy. A philosophy for the information age will need to emphasize control and communication, signal and selection, meaning, metaphor, and understanding. The gap is beginning to be filled. There is beginning to be some recognition in the United States that the more complete philosophical infrastructure that exists in Europe is also needed in the US. A more complete understanding of philosophy is needed in order for Americans to understand the foundations of second-order cybernetics. The U.S. National Academy of Sciences does decadal studies to be sure that scientists have the equipment they need to continue the progress of science. For example, orbiting telescopes, particle accelerators, or oceanographic research ships. These are all expensive items and they need to be planned for. After the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center, the National Academy of Sciences undertook a decadal study of the social sciences to help in creating knowledge necessary for fighting terrorism. The first decadal study of the social sciences was the result. Soon thereafter, the Academy of Sciences did a study on how to combine the teaching of the arts and humanities with science. They found some innovative courses in the US that combined arts, humanities, and science, but they did not study how Europeans have been teaching the philosophical foundations of science for many, many years. There is a problem with US educational policy. Europeans believe that science emerges from philosophy. All university students in Europe study philosophy. National identities are rooted in national philosophies. For example, French rationalism, British empiricism, German idealism, and American pragmatism. Different countries have different philosophical leaders. Europeans associate nationalities with their philosophical leaders. Europeans study the history of philosophy for 2 years in high school. They must pass an exam on the ideas of the leading philosophers. Students arrive at universities with a tree of knowledge in their minds. They have a mental map of how the various disciplines emerged and how they are related. For American students, different disciplines have completely separate histories. The disciplines are not part of a tree of knowledge. A new economy requires a new foundation. The economy today is changing from an industrial society to an information society. Philosophy for an industrial society is based mostly on realism and Aristotle. Philosophy for an information society is based mostly on idealism or constructivism and Plato. Americans feel more comfortable with a realist philosophy than an idealist philosophy. There is a blind spot in American science and education. Aristotle's philosophy aids us in understanding things, nature. Plato's philosophy aids us in understanding ideas and purposes, idealism and constructivism. The part of philosophy that Americans choose not to study is the part of philosophy most important for an information society. Does the neglect of subjectivity matter? The U.S. tends to emphasize objectivity and neglect subjectivity. Is this important? Consider the election of 2016, the phenomenon of fake news, and how Americans regulate social media. The algorithms built into social media reinforce existing views and have the effect of increasing polarization. We have not yet developed rules for managing the new information environment. Does the neglect of subjectivity matter in policymaking? Americans who were formulating U.S. policy toward Vietnam did not know the history of Vietnam and its long resistance to domination by China. Americans still do not have a good understanding of the culture of Afghanistan. In domestic policy, Americans have struggled with race and gender. More attention to the thoughts, ideas, and feelings of different groups of people would help in formulating wise policies. How could a different philosophy affect science? Academic social science emphasizes working with data and statistics. Action research emphasizes helping people in organizations to formulate problems, devise solutions, and develop plans to achieve their goals. In academic social research, the observer exists outside what is observed. But action research assumes the observer is part of the action. Action research is practiced by private voluntary organizations. Group process methods emphasize participation. If action research were brought inside the university and within social science, it would help in providing methods for conducting participatory social science research and action. There would be less emphasis on finding truth and more emphasis on conversation. Cybernetics has a different philosophy, theories, and methods. Cybernetics not only uses philosophies, theories, and methods borrowed from other fields, it has its own philosophy, theories, and methods. The philosophy, called constructivism, borrows from realism, but is also based on the empirical study of neurophysiology. The theories that come mostly from the field of cybernetics, but also the system sciences and traditional disciplines. The practical methods come from system science and the traditional disciplines. A Copernican revolution. Heinz von Forster, who created the term second-order cybernetics to mark a difference between early engineering cybernetics and later, more philosophical cybernetics, has described second-order cybernetics as a Copernican revolution. What did Copernicus do? He changed the center of the solar system from the Earth to the Sun, leading to a different way of observing. If we assume that observations are not purely objective, but are instead influenced by the experiences and the purposes of the scientist, how will science change? More attention will be given to the background and point of view of the observer and his or her disciplinary background and nationality. How a change in philosophy can change science. How does a different conception of philosophy lead to a different approach to science? From hypothesis testing to the design and management of conversations. From the observer outside the observed system to the observer inside the observed system. Group process methods are used to structure conversations. Participatory strategic planning is one such method. It's a way of leading people with a common interest through a conversation lasting 2 to 5 days. The activity begins by asking for their vision of the future. What do they want to see in place in about 5 years? People write down their ideas on cards and post them on a wall. Then they group the cards with similar ideas together. They name each group of ideas with a key idea. The result is a set of ideas about their future. Later, the facilitator asks, if that is what you want, why do you not already have it? What are the obstacles that are standing in the way? Again, People write down their thoughts on cards and post them on a wall. They then group the ideas that are similar and put a name on each group. Assembling ideas into a report. With a description of the obstacles that they face, the facilitator then asks them to suggest strategies that would remove the obstacles. Again, people write their ideas on cards, cluster them, and name the clusters. Given the strategies, the facilitator asks what tactics are needed to implement the strategies. Finally, people are asked to volunteer for tactics that they want to work on. These plans are then assembled into a report that describes what work needs to be done to accomplish the group's goals. After one has completed the participatory strategic planning process and written down the results that people came up with, actions are taken to implement the plans. After a few months, the results of actions are assessed. What did we say we would do? What did we actually do? What was easier than expected? What was more difficult than expected? What have we learned? And then, following that conversation, the idea is to repeat the strategic planning process. The open social innovation process consists of 4 steps: mobilizing, specifying a call to action and disseminating it; bundling, establish a place for creating, developing, and gathering ideas. This effort used Slack, a social team software. Curating, one sorts through the list of solutions and organizes support for the remaining solutions. And finally, scaling, provide resource support, and direct innovators to scaling options. A list of frequently asked questions was developed and shared. The participants met every Wednesday evening on Zoom for 6 months. 100 to 400 people attended each meeting. So these group facilitation methods have the effect of creating a learning organization. The process is that you reflect on where you are and what you want to achieve. You plan, you take action, and then you reflect on your plans and how they were implemented or not. People learn the process through practice, and they become more skilled in conducting these conversations. People become aware of new obstacles and opportunities. By working together, they develop their skills and learn the skills of others. Objective data, including maps, charts, graphs, is continually collected and shared in reports and on walls to help others understand what is happening and to become involved through informal conversations. There are a wide range of participatory methods. Appreciative inquiry is an alternative to participatory strategic planning. Appreciative inquiry is similar but different. It focuses less on problems to be solved and more on what has been achieved. The task is not so much to critique as to celebrate and to learn from past successes. Appreciative inquiry is more positive, more hopeful, less an inventory of problems. However, participatory strategic planning, by focusing on problems, tries to bring to the surface obstacles that are denied or not mentioned. A large recent experiment under the name Open Social Innovation was recently conducted in Germany. The issue was how to coordinate the actions of people in many countries in an effort to deal with COVID-19. 7 organizations in Germany organized an effort they call We Against the Virus. They requested and received support from the German government. They began with a hackathon, a kind of brainstorming exercise, on Twitter with 28,000 participants. In 48 hours, they formed teams and generated 1,500 ideas. After 1 week, 600 people with expertise evaluated the ideas and selected 20 as the best solutions. A support program further developed and expanded the ideas. The group met every Wednesday evening on Zoom for 6 months. 100 to 400 people attended each meeting. This exercise has been written up by Johanna Mayer and Thomas Gegenhuber in the Stanford Social Innovation Review. The references in the notes. So to conclude my presentation, I would just say that the American Society for Cybernetics was founded in 1964. We think we have now created an empirically grounded philosophy through the study of neurophysiology. There are theories of control and communication that are similar in style to theories of matter and energy in physics. And we have methods of conversation which help groups of people work together more effectively. Full notes are available from the conference organizers, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.